All
Hey, hey,
right,
hey.
we back, y'all. Episode 12 of Uncomfy Truths, bringing you a common sense perspective in a nonsense world. I'm your co-host, conservative brother Daily. It's great for those of you guys listening in. Small but mighty crowd we're building. Welcome back to Uncomfy Truths. Conspiracy brother, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back, and I hope we have a good, informative show.
Yes, yes. As always, a lot to talk about. You came to step away for a day now without something new happening, especially a week, if that. You guys may recognize my voice. I'm a little under the weather today. Don't worry, I already had isn't COVID. It's just kind of that time again. Obviously, we're getting into winter flu season. Obviously, went away in 2020, but apparently it's back now. There was no flu in 2020, 2021, but it's back again. So, I've got my little cough drops in front of me, got my Theraflu, all my little good stuff. So I'm good to go. Just gonna hear my voice be a little raspy. Won't be reading articles from start to finish, but we're still gonna do here. Still gonna, show up here and do what we got to do for the people. So let's go ahead, conspiracy brother. We're gonna hop in real quick to our first topic. Obviously, a little bit of old news by now, but still worth us at least giving our thoughts. Obviously, the Chinese spy balloon, pretty much psyop. Those guys remember, I think probably going on maybe 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks ago, there was a white balloon spotted. Um, I believe it was first hovering, if I'm not mistaken, around Alaska, and it was kind of working its way down to the West Coast. People weren't sure what it was or what's going on here. Then apparently China came out and said, oh, yeah, it was a weather balloon, and it kind of just happened to fly off course. And next thing you know, it's like, okay, we got this sort of getting Red Dawn vibes. You know, what's this spy surveillance mechanism floating over the country? What are they surveilling? What are they taking? I got a few thoughts on it. I think some of it was kind of overhyped and not really what it seemed. But then next thing you know, it's floating over the whole. 6 7 days goes past. Biden's not saying nothing. It finally comes out and saying, "Oh, we're working on it." And I think it flew over all of our military bases, including Missouri, through Montana, and then all the way to the East Coast when they finally shot it down over the ocean. So, we've since had these other little weird things going on with these kind of UFOs getting shot down as well. And apparently, I think there's some whole nother bullshit going on there. I figure we kind of couple these two together. So yeah, conspiracy brother, go ahead and give us your initial thoughts on this Chinese spy balloon fiasco, as well as these parent UFOs getting shot down. You know.
So I gotta say, I probably felt like, and to a large degree, I think more information has come out. Feel like you
Mhm.
felt about the whole situation, uh, because my initial reaction is like, if this is a spy balloon, right? This has to be the worst spy operation we've ever experienced, or at least that I've ever experienced in my life, right? Because it's so out in the open. It's not at
Right.
all. It's not at all hidden, right? And so, like, I know they're saying, "Oh, China can they can see better at this lower altitude than um, you know with a satellite." But it was like, with the technology we have now and the way that they seem to be turning out high technology and technological advancements in China specifically, like, I mean, I know what Google Maps, like, from the aerial view, you can see a lot. And that's just what they allow us to see publicly. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The
Right.
governments have different levels of acceptance and all that stuff. So it's just like, come on now, what's really going on? Like, what are y'all really doing? because, like I'm saying, it was totally conspicuous. Like you see these giant white balloons. Now, I didn't see any from the air personally, but looking at videos and footage and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Versus a satellite, you don't know where they are, when they are, whatever. And like you think about Google Maps, you think about like Street View and stuff. But not
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Street
I
View because
mean,
that's like, but
I think
like
at this
Google Maps
point,
overhead.
obviously, there's been a lot of overhype, a whole lot of speculation. To be honest, I think part of me was thinking, there's not a whole lot they could have collected, but at the same time, for them to go that route it took raises a lot of suspicion. But I think above anything else, it served as a perfect litmus test for Joe Biden and kind of confirmed what we already suspect that either China. I mean, I feel like Biden's already been a long time Chinese asset. There's a great docu series from the Daily Wire called "China: The Enemy Within," and they really came with receipts. And they showed just China's influence across several different sectors, from academia to Hollywood to obviously the White House. There's one of the CCP's appointees who's part of I think, the foreign policy or somewhere, the Department of Defense. So there's just so many ways that the U.S., especially the Biden administration, has long been entangled. So some people say, well, this litmus test, China wanted to see how weak Joe Biden was, and he proved them right, and they have at least a lot less respect. But I think that's kind of what they're trying to put out there. But I think Biden's already long captured, long just an asset literally for the CCP. In my opinion, probably not as compromised and as captured as Ukraine, but definitely up there. And then all of a sudden, like not even a week later, all of a sudden we have these all these reports about those getting shot down, and all while everybody's distracted from Biden's documents, these classified documents that the media is really quick to brush off. So we get this Chinese spy balloon. Now we get this thing about these UFOs getting shot down, which I think is very, very, very suspicious. Because at the end of the day, we have one of the most advanced defense technologies, covering our airspace. So for us to have this mysterious object, they can't describe what it looks like. They can't show any decent photos. They're just keeping it very hush hush, like some old school Area 51 Roswell stuff, like with the technology. But yeah, we had some fighter jets shot it down. This just has false flag all over it. And it just felt so phony. Timing's convenient with the Biden classified docs. That's all I'm saying. So, conspiracy brother, what do you think about this?
Well, even like what you're saying, they're already calling for more funding to, uh, I think, the defense. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, we already spend like $800 billion on defense annually, so like not including ancillary costs that come with that. So we spend over $1 trillion when you factor all that stuff into it. We're spending $800 billion per year on defense, and you need more because of these unidentified objects. I know there was one over Lake Huron in Michigan, and I think it ended up being like a hobby balloon or something. They said it was like they were like hobby balloons, like balloonists, and they were like $12 balloons. And so there you go, right there. You got the article up. Yes, it's like a $12 hobby balloon.
Yep.
And so like the issue, and this is kind of like I want to talk about this a little bit when we get to the Amazon story. But like
Right.
when you look at how our government operates, and this is why a lot of people say they're upset with capitalism, and this is why a lot of people think that socialism or communism is a better option. I'm not saying whether it is or not. I have no real understanding of people's justifications in depth. I think every financial
Mm-hmm.
system is going to have limitations and strengths, and I think it all depends on implementation. And so it's a situation where the more control you give to any group within a financial system, be it individuals, be it corporations, be it the government, they're going to take full advantage of it. So I think you have to kind of do what works best for you. But for us in a capitalist system, with a profit-driven capitalist system, I guess you could almost call it like, like a oligarchy. Um, the country
Mm-hmm.
is used by all these different institutions, from the pharmaceutical industry to the prison industrial, the military industrial complex, to make money off of. Right. So they make money off of the country. The country is us, the people. Right. Our tax
Mm-hmm.
money, our lives. We're guinea pigs or whatever. We're subject to these kind of restrictions or this testing or whatever. So it doesn't matter if you spend $400,000 shooting on for one rocket to shoot down a $12 balloon, because who's responsible for that? Right. Nobody in the government is being fired. Nobody in the government is being held responsible. They don't have to pay for it. And so, it's a purely profit driven institution where these companies, these defense contracting companies, lobby the members of government, Congress, the president, and they give them money. So these politicians in turn write laws and take actions that benefit these companies, like this, spending $500,000 on a missile to shoot down a balloon. Like, we don't have a better system yet to figure out ways to allocate our resources. So I mean, that's my, it's a bigger story about the problem with the American capitalistic greed, the monopolistic power that we have given companies and corporations to make money off of our backs as citizens. And something does need to be done. And I'm not saying you got to be a communist or a socialist, but we can't have free market capitalism for us and then have corporate socialism, right? That can't happen. The people suffer, the people die, the people lose, but the corporations never lose because they are continually being taken care of by the government, right? But we don't call that a handout. We don't call that any type of government bailout. But these contracts,
Mm-hmm.
from an economic standpoint, these contracts are government assistance. Whether we think, well, they're providing a service or a good to the government, it's still government assistance from an economic standpoint. And so we have to be mindful of that.
That, along with just a lot of this, there's always an angle, false flag, political theater, and then, like you said, talk about reckless spending and just feeding more than military industrial complex. Like, we have really nothing better to spend these tax dollars on. This is even worse. It's more of a waste of money than Ukraine, to be honest with you. I can go off on that. But moving on, those of you guys tuning in, once again, welcome back to Truths, spreading common sense in a nonsense world. I'm your co-host, Conservative Brother Daily, here with Conspiracy Brother. And here's our next topic. Conspiracy Brother, you go ahead and take the lead on this. Tell us about this. Apparently got an Amazon employee didn't last long on the job. What's going on? Oh, Conspiracy Brother?
Sorry. Yeah, I was muted. So I said you can play. It's a TikTok video associated with this, but this
Okay.
Amazon employee claims she scammed Amazon. She worked there for a month. She says she always quits her jobs. So she always quits for like stupid reasons. She doesn't like them or whatever. And this is no
Right.
different. So she was working here. She didn't like it. And so rather than quit, she just sat in the break room until they fired her, basically. Like, she would just clock in,
Mm-hmm.
stay there for 10 hours or however long her shift was, and then clock out. And I just want you to play the first TikTok. I think it's
It's a
stupid
new
because it's a
phenomenon.
follow up.
They call it slow quitting.
Yeah.
They call it slow quitting. New
And
phenomenon.
I just wanted you to hear her kind of explain what
Okay.
she did, because it's an interesting this is an interesting situation that I think, can illuminate some of the conversation we're having.
I'm gonna try and play it over again.
Okay, you may have to unmute it.
So I just quit.
You hear her? Did you hear
I
that?
can hear her. It's a little bit. It's a little sketchy, but I can hear her.
I'm, I'm trying to see the play from the beginning. These TikTokers, I tell you, they're just.
I mean, you're just snitching on
I get
yourself,
exhausted
man. I
just looking
mean,
at the video.
yeah, and they're just
Apparently, she
snitching
don't
on
care. I mean, she's
themselves.
sort of. I mean, I'm pretty sure
No,
she's probably at a point getting her TikTok videos, she's trying to focus more on that. All right.
yeah, I mean, they have you believe they don't care, but I think that's just a symptom of not looking at the long term ramifications of your actions. But everybody's an adult.
Mm. Everybody's physically an adult, but not mentally. A lot of they call it a delayed out there. Yeah, I don't know why TikTok isn't loading again.
Ah, well, it's fine. But
Yeah, let me see if
essentially,
I.
well, I'll talk about it in the meantime. But essentially, the situation is this,
Yeah.
right? The younger generation of people don't see a value in working. I mean, just to make it plain, right? And so, because they don't see a value in working, they don't work. Uh,
Yep.
and so, this is the kind of mentality you have, right? Where everybody either expects to live with their parents or they expect to
Mm-hmm.
just make videos online and hope to go viral, right? And
Right.
in a way, I don't blame them, right? Because when you look at realistically the cost of buying a home, the cost of buying a new house, all these different things uh, that we would like to have, we would all like to have things that our parents have or had, things that our grandparents have or had. The American
Mm-hmm.
dream is so out of reach. Like George Carlin has a joke, and I mean, he said this joke maybe 10 years ago. He says they call it American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. But let's just take it, at face value, right? That everybody wants the American dream.
Right.
The reality has
Right.
set in because, like I said, earlier, because we have allowed corporations, pharmaceutical companies, uh, uh, defense contractors, politicians to take advantage of us so thoroughly. Um, that a lot of the younger people are just apathetic. And so we see that production decreasing, right? Schools are trash. The high school, the American school system is just if you look at libs of TikTok, you can see the types of teachers we have, the types of things that they're teaching our children, right? When
Yep.
you look at when you look at debates at some of the college campuses, when you look at like a Steven Crowder, or when you see Ben Shapiro on a college campus and engaging with college students, or even, Brett Weinstein engaging with college students, engaging with young adults, you don't have any hope in the future, right? And so
Yeah.
I picked those individuals specifically because they have a counter cultural view from most college campuses, right? They're conservative, most colleges are liberal, and so they interact with liberal students. And just not just you see people with different political ideology, and they're not able to. These young people are not able to coexist in that space, you know. And so, I mean, this again is a product of exploitation, right? We are as a society, the citizens of America are being exploited by our government, by the corporations who donate to these politicians. The pharmaceutical industry, the last 3 to 4 years
Mm-hmm.
of this COVID episode has shown us that our rights are being trampled on at every turn. And so you have these students who are apathetic now. They're being indoctrinated by these teachers and these schools And this is what happens. And so productivity is going to go down. So of course China is doing what they're doing, or
Yep.
of course, Russia, whether you believe Russia is justified in uh, its actions or not. I'm not making a claim about it, but the American political posture is that Russia is incorrect. But why wouldn't Russia try us when they feel like they have a good chance of winning now? Why wouldn't China try us when they feel like, hey, you do it to us, and so we feel like you guys are weak enough that we can return the favor? And I'm not saying that the balloons are anything more than just a distraction, but that's what I'm saying is the mentality now on the global scale. America has it's cannibalized the rich, the wealthy, the corporations, the politicians, because of a lack of accountability, have cannibalized the citizens, the base, the people, the workers, those of us who actually are responsible for things, who have to be responsible for our actions, who when we commit a crime, we go to jail, who when we drive drunk, we go to jail, who when we break laws, we go to jail or be fired. Unlike Nancy Pelosi's husband, he drives drunk and he gets to go to the hospital, right? Or Hunter Biden, when he's a crackhead, he gets lucrative thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars a month contracts, international business deals, right? That doesn't happen to the regular, everyday American citizen. And so,
I ever had minor of inconveniences. So I'm going to tell you every single job I quit and why. I got so tired of working at Amazon because everyone watches you all the time. And I just got so tired of it. And then I would sit in the break room for 10 hours every single day. I did this for like a month until I got me to explain myself. So I just quit. So I used to work at a pizzeria, not this one, but you'd be surprised how many customers are so rude over pizza. At one point, I literally got so mad that I cursed at a customer. And then I immediately realized what I did. And I was like, well, there is absolutely no coming back from this. So instead of arguing with them, I literally just hung up the phone. I looked back and I was like, I need to go outside for. So I used to work at Don Pablo's, rest in peace. So freaking boring. Wow. I picked up smoking just so I could go outside and have like a million smoke breaks so I wouldn't have to do my job. It was literally that boring. And the one day I went to go smoke and then I came back to the front and all the girls were like, hey, like the boss is looking for you. And I was like, well, why? And they were like, well, I think they want you to stay later. Because the other like people like left, so like they wanted you to stay later, and I was like, So I clocked out. I told them, meet me outside right now. I picked up my things and I left, and I never came back.
All right, conspiracy brother. There it is. We had to see it in full context. I got a couple of things I want to add, and we got to move on to the next topic. But you can finish what you were saying. I just wanted to make sure.
So when you look at that behavior, right, it's a lack of accountability at home. Right? The parents are not teaching this child responsibility because nobody, unless you're this president or the CEO, nobody likes their job, right? We're all doing a job that we have to do because of whatever our financial needs are. Some people might even like, I'm a cartoonist. I do cartoons, so maybe I love to do that. And that might be true, but when you put a deadline on it, it's no longer it's not a hobby now. It's not your passion. If I've got a deadline now, I don't like drawing anymore. It has nothing to do with that. I got to make this cartoon because this is the deadline. So, I mean, this is what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to make excuses for this person at all, but they have been failed at every step of their development. They have been failed from the president of the country. Go back to however many years you need to, Bush, Obama, Clinton, whoever, however old they are, from the president of the country to their parents and everybody in between. And I'm not holding anybody, any incidental people, because there's only so much you can do. But all these people who have a hand in her development, right? Not just some concerned onlooker, but a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, the president, the politicians, making sure you hold these corporations and entities accountable, is responsible for this type of behavior. So I'll stop there.
All right. Great point. Great point. So conspiracy brother, I actually have to pop out the studio for a brief moment. What I wanted
Okay.
to do is be able to continue screen sharing, but I got to pop out and we to do a little company move real quick. Our topic is the Ohio train. Now, is there a way you could screen share? I could send these links to you. You could screen share them real quick. I apologize.
Yeah.
That matter.
No, that's no problem. I should be able to do that. No problem. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and. All right. All right. Let me get this. Yeah. Can you here? You want me to screenshot this to you? All right. I apologize.
No
We
problem.
want to pause it real quick. Well, actually, no. We can keep going. We can keep going.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. It's, you know,
Yeah, I gotta.
this is a small operation with two concerned citizens. So you know,
Yeah. All right. Let
the
me
story is
head
most
out.
important.
I gotta exit.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
I'll
gonna pull
drop
this
you
back.
out.
Okay.
Okay, just let me know when you come back. um, but so while I am in the process of organizing uh, these links, bear with me for a moment, please. Okay, so I'm back here and going to be discussing the East Palestine train derailment just slightly. So I pulled up an article from The Guardian, um, and it says here, safety regulators say Ohio toxic train derailment 100% preventable. So I think a lot of us are aware of these toxic train derailment in Ohio. I'm not really sure where it is in Ohio. But it kind of got media silence, like radio silence, for the first 3 to 4 days that it occurred. And it says Biden administration comes under fire for response, while East Palestine residents worry about long-term health implications. So here you can see, I think that's Pete Buttigieg right there. Second, or no, I guess it'd be fourth from the right. Let's see. Yeah. Joe Biden received a briefing after the transportation secretary after the secretary's visit. So let's see. Joe Biden received a briefing on Friday on the multi-agency response to the derailment in Ohio of a freight train carrying toxic chemicals. As his administration came under criticism, and safety regulators said the incident had been 100% preventable, although the train crew were not at fault. The White House said the U.S. president was being briefed after Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg visited East Palestine for the first time since the toxic spill and fire 3 weeks ago. So I was wrong. This may have been given radio silence for about 2 weeks, because I think I didn't really hear people talking about this until about a week ago. So the National Transportation Safety Board Chair Jennifer Homendy expressed concern about rail safety measures as the agency released an interim report. Quote, "We know for a fact what caused this derailment," end quote. Homendy said on CNN on Friday morning, indicating that it was the dramatic overheating of a specific wheel bearing and the fact that sensors on the track did not catch that overheating until it was too late. Quote, "The crew did not do anything wrong," she said. End quote. She said, noting that they had responded correctly to an alarm, but their train derailed anyway on February 3rd. Quote, "Now it's looking at how we got there," Homendy said. Quote, "What conditions were present to allow that to happen? And then we're going to look at what would prevent it from reoccurring in the future," end quote. The NTSB said 38 cars had derailed and that a fire had damaged 12 more, so a total of 50 cars. And that those derailed 11 carried hazardous material. Asked by CNN if the safety systems were, quote, "inadequate," end quote, Homendy noted that they were set by the rail company in question, Norfolk Southern, and not by government. Quote, "Those temperature thresholds are not set by regulation. They are not set by guidance. They vary by railroad, and it's their decision," end quote, she said. The NTSB has, quote, "a lot of questions," end quote, Homendy added, quote, "about the safety thresholds and why they vary so much between railroads. Why aren't they more conservative? Should they be lower? All these questions we are going to ask repeatedly in our investigation," end quote. Homendy also noted that in 2014, the NTSB recommended more categories of chemicals be covered by regulations on hazardous material. On Friday, Ohio's Republican Governor Mike DeWine announced that contaminated waste from the spill site will be transported to a site near Detroit, Michigan for disposal, while contaminated water will be shipped to a site near Houston, immediately sparking further environmental concerns about transportation and pollution. Meanwhile, high-profile visits by the Environmental Protection Administration EPA chief and other state and national leaders have done little to counteract the distrust and anger in East Palestine and the region about the official response. A police officer based in Darlington Township, just over the state line in Pennsylvania, was at the disaster scene within 4 hours on Friday, 3rd February, and then for more than 20 hours over the following few days. He spoke to The Guardian on the condition of anonymity, as he was not authorized to discuss the matter. Quote, "We were never given the heads up about what was on the train. There was a lack of communication, and we were never told to put on protective hazmat gear, so I didn't wear anything. The PPE, personal protective equipment, we have dates back to 2010 anyway, so what good was that?" end quote, he said. He also added, now this is the key part. He also added, we're sending billions to Ukraine, but there's no money for us, end quote. Let me repeat that again, because that's important to kind of get out, right? Because that's something we need to kind of think about. I wish I had some way to modulate my voice so that it would echo when I say this, but I don't. I gotta invest in something else. But it says, quote, we're sending billions to Ukraine, about 100 billion if I'm not mistaken at this point, but there's no money for us, end quote. People affected by the spill are already noticing ill effects to their health, and there are growing concerns about the long-term health implications. Give me one moment. I've had a constant headache since 8 February. I hope I don't end up in a grave quicker because of this. The people don't trust the EPA because they're coming around with Norfolk Southern to test air quality, and we know the company is all about the money, quote, the law enforcement officer added. The president is coming under fire. So everybody, all these back the blue and all this stuff. You see the Republican governor of Ohio, they didn't tell the police officers to take care of themselves, right? So this just goes to show you on either side of the political aisle, right? They don't care about the people. Because if they did care about the people, the police officer is the people too. He's just a person with a job. He's not a decision maker. Not in every instance. In the instance of a traffic stop, yes. But in every instance, no. He's not a decision maker. He has no say. So, to continue, quote, Biden, it says the president is under fire. The president is coming under fire. Quote, Biden should have been here from day one, end quote, said Rich Boggs, 70, a supporter of former Republican president and 2024 candidate Donald Trump. Boggs owns a gas station in Darlington around 5 miles from the derailment. Trump won by a large majority in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, and Columbiana County, Ohio, the two areas most affected by the toxic spill. But even in East Palestine, where the cleanup efforts and resources are focused, residents are struggling to get help and answers they need. Scott Beresford, 43, lives around 650 feet or 200 meters from the derailment site, which is visible from the yard where he grows tomatoes, peppers, asparagus, garlic, beans, and eggplants, which he now fears is contaminated by the toxic spill. The basement regularly floods, and he is also scared that harmful pollutants in the air and material buried by the rail operator Norfolk Southern will seep into the house. Quote, all summer and winter, I eat off my garden, but they just buried that toxic stuff, and now the company nor the EPA will test my soil. That's what drives me nuts. I paid $400 for an independent test, but that's just for 4 chemicals. That's a lot of money for me and everyone in this town, end quote, said Beresford, a construction worker. Locals get waves of a burning smell every time the wind shifts. Quote, I smell it in the shower, in my coffee. It gives me a constant headache. My daughter had a panic attack. She thought she was dying, end quote, Beresford said, adding his family was worried they might have to move. So one of the major chemicals that was on that train is called vinyl chloride. And I want to kind of go over that just so we can look into it. I want to try to find an article I had sent earlier. So this is from, let me see this. These are all more recent. So cancer.gov. Let's see. We can look at cancer.gov. Cancer.gov about vinyl chloride. So this article, I believe, was from 2018. But it's updated November 3rd, 2022. So this is old. So we get an idea to have something that's not biased by current events. So no recency bias. Let's hear. What is vinyl chloride? Vinyl chloride is a colorless gas that burns easily. It does not occur naturally and must be produced industrially for its commercial use. Vinyl chloride is primarily used to make polyvinyl chloride, PVC, a hard plastic resin used to make a variety of plastic products, including pipes, wire, and cable coatings, and packaging materials. PVC is not a known or suspected carcinogen. So, polyvinyl chloride is not a known or suspected carcinogen. Vinyl chloride is also produced as a combustion product in tobacco smoke. So when you smoke cigarettes, you inhale polyvinyl chloride. So we all know how great cigarette smoke is. And so it says, how are people exposed? Workers at facilities where polyvinyl chloride, where vinyl chloride is produced or used may be exposed primarily through inhalation. The general population may be exposed by inhaling contaminated air or tobacco smoke. In the environment, the highest levels of vinyl chloride are found in air around factories that produce vinyl products. If a water supply is contaminated, vinyl chloride can enter household air when the water is used for showering, cooking, or laundry. Which cancers are associated with exposure to vinyl chloride? So it said that polyvinyl chloride, PVC, is not, what did it say? Is not known or suspected carcinogen, but vinyl chloride is. Vinyl chloride exposure is associated with an increased risk of a rare form of liver cancer, hepatic angiosarcoma, as well as primary liver cancer, hepatocellular carcinoma, brain and lung cancers, lymphoma, and leukemia. How can exposures be reduced? The U.S. Occupational Health and Safety and Health Administration provides information about exposure limits. So I'll click on that, exposure limits, because it's actually ridiculous. The limits. Okay, so let's see. It says, where's the exposure? Let's see. I am not a scientist, so some of these I don't know for certain. Exposure limits, okay? So it says, I don't know what PELTWA. Let's see if I can see what that is. OSHA PEL. So it's not letting me know, but the various states. So OSHA, I don't know if that's just, so Cal OSHA. So these are, I guess, different Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They all have 1 part per million and 0.5 per million for action level. PELC, I don't know what that means. 5 parts per million. So 1 part per million, that's significantly low, right? And so this is just pumping out into the environment. And recently they've just been burning it. They've been burning, let's see if I can find another. They've been burning it. So let's see. No thanks. I don't want to do a survey. Chemical and physical properties. So this is from PubChem, which I think is through the NIH. And it goes into the structure and health hazard. It's flammable. So it says vinyl chloride is a chlorinated hydrocarbon occurring as a colorless, highly flammable gas with a mild sweet odor that may emit toxic fumes of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, hydrogen chloride, and phosgene when heated to decomposition. Vinyl chloride is primarily used to make polyvinyl chloride to manufacture plastics. Exposure to this substance affects the central and peripheral nervous system and causes liver damage. Prolonged exposure to vinyl chloride can cause a set of symptoms that is characterized by Raynaud's phenomenon, joint and muscle pain, and scleroderma, like skin changes. Vinyl chloride is known human carcinogen and is associated with an increased risk of developing liver cancer, predominantly angiosarcoma of the liver, but is also linked to brain and lung cancer as well as cancer of the lymphatic and hematopoietic system. So, and then you see Joe Biden going to Ukraine and spending time with Zelensky, right? So this is ultimately what I'm saying when I talk about the military-industrial complex, when I talk about the pharmaceutical complex, right? The pharmaceutical industrial complex, if you want to call it that, right? The American people suffer, right? You have the president of the United States is more invested in the Ukrainians, giving hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukrainians, when you are not even giving these people here medical treatment. Give them free medical treatment, or at least have Norfolk Southern have to cover it, but it's not happening. And it's not because Joe Biden is a Democrat, right? It's because Joe Biden is a trash individual. The political establishment is invested in their own enrichment, Democrat or Republican, to the detriment of the people. And so this is what happens. Because it was something I heard and I was trying to find it, but I couldn't. But what I was hearing about this is that you can't even touch this. You can't even touch this. So it says 120 parts per million is a fatal dose for an adult. 120,000 parts per million. But the exposure limits is 1 part per million. So they don't even recommend you have even 1 part per million from OSHA. So, it's so PEL is permissible exposure limit. That's what that is. So clicking that, it says the permissible exposure limit is 1 part per million. So it says the fatal limit is 120,000. That's what the NIH says. 120,000 parts per million is the fatal limit for adults. But the OSHA recommended dose limit is 1 part. No employee may be exposed to vinyl chloride at concentrations greater than 1 part per million averaged over any 8-day period. No employee can be exposed to vinyl chloride at concentrations greater than 5 parts per million averaged over any period not exceeding 15 minutes. No employee may be exposed to vinyl chloride by direct contact with liquid vinyl chloride. And they had liquid vinyl chloride on the bus, on the train. So you can't even touch it in this liquefied form at all. And it's been released in the water system, in the ground, and in the air because they're burning it now. How many parts per million are being released in the air? The article I read you, the Bears, or whatever his name was, Beresford, said they're not even testing the air or the soil. And he eats out of a garden. And we're in a recession, right? So this is a way that he's allowed to tackle the cost increase that is caused by our government and their disconnection from the people, right? The politicians, like I said, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, the military industrial complex, they make money, they print money, they give money to each other, to the major corporations. They devalue our money, they cause inflation. And even now, when people have figured out ways to try to counteract the increase in costs due to inflation, now you're poisoned in your food and that you're growing yourself. Your soil is poisoned. They said every time locals get waves of a burning smell every time the wind shifts. If you're smelling that, is that exposure? And what part per million exposure is that? Quote, I smell it in the shower, in my coffee. It gives me a constant headache. My daughter had a panic attack. She thought she was dying, end quote. This is a travesty. But you would have us, the politicians would have us be concerned with chemical weapons in Ukraine, when our government is facilitating the destruction of American people in America today, in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, right now. Your president, rather than go to Ohio and deal with this, has gone to Ukraine to assure the president of Ukraine that the United States is behind him 100%, no matter what, forever. This is what we're up against. So I want to try to move on from this topic because we have a few topics that we need to talk about. But it's really it's an unfortunate situation that more of us can't understand who the enemy is, right? The enemy isn't just, my neighbor who voted differently than me, my family member who voted differently than me, my coworkers who might have a different political ideology. Because none of those people have the immediate ability to kill you. But when we look at the powerful, the oligarchs, the politicians, right? They have the ability to kill us. They have the ability to completely destroy our way of life. And they're doing it for their own enrichment. Going to Ukraine to talk about sending over weapons and money and assistance when people in America are dying today. And you can say, there's an administration and Pete Buttigieg is there and he's the transportation secretary and there's an apparatus. But optically, the media always loves optics. What does that say optically? That your first course of action when there's a tragedy, a natural, an ecological and environmental disaster in your country, that your first course of action is to leave, to go and console someone else in a foreign country. So I want to talk a little bit about the Nordstream pipeline because I want to talk about the Nordstream pipeline because Seymour Hersh recently published an article on his Substack and one through People's Dispatch that goes into how the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. I won't read this whole article because it's kind of long. I don't know when Conservative Brother is coming back. So you just got me for now. Hopefully this is still informative and entertaining. So I'll read some of it. And I want to play a video. So while I'm playing this video, I think I want to, after I read this byline, then I'll play the video. But it says, how America took out the Nord Stream pipeline. The New York Times called it a, quote, mystery, end quote, but the United States executed a covert sea operation that was kept secret until now. It was released February 10th. This story is by Seymour Hersh. Okay. So when the Nord Stream pipeline was blown up, initially, there was a lot of, hand wringing about the situation. Russia did it, and Vladimir Putin did it, and he did it to try to cripple Europe and all this and all that. That made absolutely no sense. It made absolutely no sense. That was a revenue source for them. And by them, I mean Russia. So that makes absolutely no sense that they would want to do that. But let's see. I'm going to try to play this video right quick, and hopefully you can hear it. Let me see. Okay, so I took it off to make sure that you were able to hear. So this is by Matt Orfala. He's a video. He produces videos. You can see his channel name here, and I think he worked for the Bernie campaign for like a day, maybe a week, when somebody dug up an old video that he spliced to try to, yeah, I won't get into it, but he makes good work. Matt Orfala does good work with his video production, and so this video is called "Who Blew Up the Nord Stream Pipeline?" So they're trying to say it was Russia. They've tried to say it was Russia from the beginning, and watch this video. It's 7 minutes, so we'll see how much of it we watch. But we'll see how much of that would make sense for Russia to be the one to blow it up, and I'll even speed it up. Maybe if I speed it up 1.5 times, it'll go by a little faster. Okay, sorry if that made anybody sick. Certainly made me sick. But the reason that I wanted to play that is because it's important, right? It's important within the context of what I'm talking about. It's important within the context of the story. And you see Jeffrey Sachs, the lone voice to say that it's very likely the U.S. did it. What's your proof? Everyone in that video spouted complete, unproven nonsense that it was Russia. And no one ever pushed back, just nodding their heads in agreement. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, right? Nobody pushed back. ABC News, whatever, whoever. The Reuters, the New York Times. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. They try to play this game like, oh, the Republicans are, or the liberals are, or the conservatives are, or the Democrats are. They're on the same team. They're on the same team. You saw Tom Cotton, I believe. That was Tom Cotton. That wasn't Josh Hawley. That was Tom Cotton. I believe he's a senator from Nebraska. Saying that, we got to get rid of this pipeline. Ted Cruz, he gets paid from the natural gas, a lot of the natural gas people in Houston, right? So we know why some of these people have an interest in getting Europe off Russian gas. But the same people who told all of us, oh, this is Russian, Russia blew up this pipeline, are the same people who told us that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. They're the same people that told you if you got one shot, you were good, you were fully immunized. They're the same people who told you that masking worked. They're the same people who told you if you got vaccinated, you wouldn't. If you got your vaccine and your booster and all this, you wouldn't be able to spread it. You wouldn't contract it. All this other, and they all were proven to be liars. This is ultimately, the objective that we're trying to show you, that these people are liars, unabashed liars. And so when you think, oh, I'll get my news from Fox News. Fox News, they support candidates. They support an institution or a system in which wealth, power, and control is still isolated in the hands of those who would take advantage of us as a people. Whether you're a conservative or a liberal, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, Fox News still has an interest in war. They have an interest in propaganda. They have an interest in how things are going, the status quo, continuing to go the way that they're going now. So let me get to the article. The U.S. Navy, he lays this out in entirety. The U.S. Navy's Diving and Salvage Center can be found in a location as obscure as its name, down what was once a country lane in rural Panama City, a now booming resort city in the southwestern panhandle of Florida, 70 miles south of the Alabama border. The center's complex is as nondescript as its location. A drab, concrete post-World War II structure that has the look of a vocational high school on the west side of Chicago. A coin-operated laundromat and a dance school are across what is now a 4-lane road. The center has been training highly skilled deep divers for decades who, once assigned to American military units worldwide, are capable of technical diving to do the good, using C4 explosives to clear harbors and beaches of debris and unexploded ordnance, as well as the bad, like blowing up foreign oil rigs, fouling intake valves for undersea power plants, destroying locks on crucial shipping canals. The Panama City Center, which boasts the second largest indoor pool in America, was the perfect place to recruit the best and most taciturn graduates of the diving school who successfully did last summer what they had been authorized to do 260 feet under the surface of the Baltic Sea. Last June, the Navy divers, operating under the cover of a widely publicized midsummer NATO exercise known as Baltops 22, which is Baltic, if I'm not mistaken, it's Baltic Sea Operations 22 is what that stands for, planted the remotely triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines, according to a source with direct knowledge of the operational planning. And let me just, because I didn't do this and I need to set the scene, so to speak. Seymour Hersh, his claim to fame is, let me just give you his claim to fame is the My Lai massacre, reporting of the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. That's it was a mass murder of unarmed South Vietnamese civilians by United States troops on the 16th of March, 1968, during the Vietnam War. Between 347 and 504 unarmed people were killed by U.S. Army soldiers from Company C, 1st Battalion, 20th Infantry Regiment, 11th Brigade, 23rd Infantry Division. Okay. So his claim to fame was that, exposing the U.S. government's killing of unarmed people in South Vietnam, right? He also reported heavily, he's not given as much credit, but he's reported heavily on the Watergate scandal, right? Woodward and Bernstein tend to get more of the attention in that, but he reported heavily. He's one of our most well-respected investigative journalists, right? And now what they've tried to do is, if they talked about this at all, they tried to discredit him because they understand that he's telling the truth. They don't really have a leg to stand on, right? So 2 of the pipelines, which were known collectively as Nord Stream 1, have been providing Germany and much of Western Europe with cheap Russian natural gas for more than a decade. A second pair of pipelines called Nord Stream 2 have been built, but were not yet operational. Now, with Russian troops massing on the Ukrainian border and the bloodiest war in Europe since 1945 looming, President Joseph Biden saw the pipelines as a vehicle for Vladimir Putin to weaponize natural gas for his political and territorial ambitions, and asked for comment. Adrian Watson, a White House spokesperson, said in an email, quote, "This is false and complete fiction," end quote. Tammy Thorpe, a spokesperson for the Central Intelligence Agency. So like we saw in the video, all the different CIA connected individuals, former CIA head, I forget his name now. I think his name is Berman. We can trust them 100%. The CIA is the most trustworthy organization we have. It says the CIA similarly wrote, quote, "This claim is completely and utterly false." End quote. Biden's decision to sabotage the pipelines came after more than 9 months of highly secret back and forth debate inside Washington's national security community about how to best achieve that goal. For much of that time, the issue was not whether to do this mission, but how to get it done with no overt clue as to who was responsible. There was a vital bureaucratic reason for relying on the graduates of the center's hardcore diving school in Panama City. The divers were Navy only and not members of America's Special Operations Command, whose covert operations must be reported to Congress and briefed in advance to the Senate and House leadership, the so-called Gang of Eight. The Biden administration was doing everything possible to avoid leaks as the planning took place late in 2021 and the first months of 2022. President Biden, his foreign policy team, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Secretary of State Tony Blinken, and Victoria Nuland, the Undersecretary of State for Policy, had been vocal and consistent in their hostility to the 2 pipelines, which ran side by side for 750 miles under the Baltic Sea from 2 different ports in northeastern Russia near the Estonian border, passing close to the Danish island of Bornholm before ending in northern Germany. The direct route, so Nord Stream 1 went through Ukraine. Nord Stream 2 bypassed Ukraine, went into the Baltic Sea and through Germany. So it did not have to, Ukraine could no longer receive fees from Russia for the gas. The direct route, which bypassed any need to transit Ukraine, had been a boon for the German economy, which enjoyed an abundance of cheap Russian natural gas. enough to run its factories and heat its homes, while enabling German distributors to sell excess gas at a profit throughout Western Europe. Action that could be traced to the administration would violate U.S. promises to minimize direct conflict with Russia. Secrecy was essential. And one of the things why the U.S. government would be so adamant about making sure that this couldn't be traced to them is because this would be considered an act of war. Sabotaging critical infrastructure can be considered an act of war, which is why every time you hear them on the news talking about Russia bombing Ukraine, they try to say that Russia is bombing critical infrastructure. They say that so that they can try to justify escalating the involvement of NATO or the West, the U.S., the Western coalition. That's why they keep trying to do all these pretexts. So if they could show, I mean, because it's technically an act of war against Germany and I think Austria, because Germany and Austria also paid into the pipeline. So it's not just wholly Russian owned. From its earliest days, Nord Stream 1 was seen by Washington and its anti-Russian NATO partners as a threat to Western dominance. The holding company behind it, Nord Stream AG, was incorporated in Switzerland in 2005 in partnership with Gazprom, a publicly traded Russian company producing enormous profits for its shareholders, which is dominated by oligarchs known to be in the thrall of Putin. Gazprom controlled 51% of the company, with 4 European energy firms, 1 in France, 1 in the Netherlands, and 2 in Germany sharing the remaining 49% of the stock, and having the right to control downstream sales of the inexpensive natural gas to local distributors in Germany and Western Europe. Gazprom's profits were shared with the Russian government and the state, and state gas and oil revenues were estimated in some years to amount as much as 45% of Russia's annual budget. So, again, when you look at the neocon policy of spreading American exceptionalism and globalism, this is why this kind of thing happens. This is a fairly long article, and I read it all myself. It's informative. It's extremely informative. But, you know, it's, I don't want to go over it all here. This is a layout of where the pipelines were. So these are the pipelines here. And then these are the naval bases where the soldiers left to detonate the bombs. I mean, it's a very, I'll try to leave a link for this in when I post the video. But let's see. This is a video of Joe Biden talking about how they're going to blow up the pipeline if Russia escalates war with Ukraine or invades Ukraine. Victoria Nuland, Anthony Blinken, and Jake Sullivan. Jake Sullivan looks like a snake person. I think he's 40, and he looks like you know, like he's wearing a skin suit. So, you know, the intention is to just, with our show, is to try to, it's really for us to try to enlighten and discuss some of those things that we can't get a clear and honest picture of from the mainstream media. It's you know, when you look at Victoria Nuland, she's a Republican, but she's been in Obama's cabinet. She's now in Biden's cabinet. And so this is the situation. We sometimes can get so ideologically entrenched as regular people that we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to work with and to interact with people we disagree with. The politicians, the elites, the political class, they don't do that. They don't have that problem. Kellyanne Conway, who was, I think, I don't know if she was the White House chief of staff. I can't remember what her title was. But her husband was a Democrat, if I'm not mistaken. But you get us to fight about these arbitrary political labels. And then, the machine moves itself. There was a Rage Against the War Machine rally last weekend in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial. And it was people from all different political ideologies coming together to stand up and protest against escalation of the war in Ukraine. And we need more integrity and more, we need to have more integrity and more courage. We need more people who are willing to stand up and say, hey, not in our name. I will not allow you to destroy another group of people. I will not allow you to destroy another generation. Right? Because the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, that was my whole life from 2001 till, Trump started the process in 2021 to get us out. And so, we need to, as a group, stand up and say that we're not going to allow our government to do this. And I mean, the threat of nuclear war is real. Russia has more nuclear weapons than we do. And China and Russia are coming together to form a military and economic alliance. We cannot allow these politicians, whatever your political affiliation, we cannot allow them to continue to what the slow march of death. We need to figure out a way to wake up, to stand up, and fight back. We need to figure out a way to say no more. So, I think I'm trying to see. So it looks like I got a message. This is it's a really disheartening situation to be in because when you hear a lot about the Matrix and when you look at the Matrix and you sit there and you think about the implications of being in a world that does not exist outside of your mind, where you're being controlled and programmed to do things, to believe things, to accept things that aren't real or true. This is kind of what you see, this whole apparatus. Like I talked in I don't know if it was the last episode or two ago, about 1984 and how it seems as though it has been used as a playbook for the elites, more so than a cautionary tale. More than a warning, it was a blueprint. And you know, when you look at the way the media manufactures consent, to quote from Noam Chomsky, the media manufactures consent for war. They manufacture consent for these actions because the only people that the politicians and the media establishment and the corporations listen to is their echo chamber of each other. And they're all repeating the same garbage. There's no pushback. There's no one saying, hey, we ought not do this. There's no one stepping back and trying to be a voice of reason or a voice of a different perspective. It doesn't happen. And so we're all victims of powers beyond our control. I am going to, I think I'm going to pause for a second. Conservative brother should be coming soon. He should be coming back soon. And I'm going to pause for a second just to give him a chance to kind of get settled in, and then we'll go from there. So bear with me, please.
All
And
right.
we're back.
Company Truths, we are back. Hey, nobody can't hold us down, man. We gotta keep showing up. So even though I'm a little under the weather, we had a little technical difficulty earlier. We're bringing you part two, so hopefully we'll have this cut up. You won't even notice. But we're continuing with the topics, for the culture, for everybody out here trying to seek the truth. We are Uncomfy Truths. So I'd like to go ahead and we were going to hit on this topic from outside of Detroit, Michigan. Obviously, we're still in the whole uh, what's the hoopla of the Ohio chemical train disaster. Hearts go out to everybody East Palestine dealing with that and the fallout for the next weeks, months. But another weird story out in Van Buren Township, about hour or so from Detroit area, there was another train derailment. All right. So Michigan's just, Ohio's, upper neighbor, and this happened. And basically, it was a train carrying a one car of hazardous material. So it wasn't like the atomic train, white noise, Netflix level of what East Palestine was. Luckily, there were no injuries. But this just goes to show uh, you know, are these events related? Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about blame going back and forth between the Biden administration, Trump administration on rail safety, Pete Buttigieg and his lack of really action in his role. But I think a lot of this does come down to kind of deteriorating rail lines and like they were mentioning the safety issues, and each administration keeps kind of taking blame back and forth. Um, But yeah, I think this is just very interesting and very unsettling, especially coming out of this Ohio train incident. Now we have this one on. So, conspiracy brother, what were your thoughts on this? Very, very concerning. Scratching my head all over again.
Well, if I put on my conspiracy hat, it does seem a bit odd, right? When I dealt with the train in Ohio, I talked a bit about how it was so dangerous, the chemical, the vinyl chloride, the liquid vinyl chloride, like 1 part per million is the safety recommendation by OSHA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went into talking about how looking at
You're a little
how
coming a little staticky again.
is that still staticky, or is it better?
Yeah, it went back to staticky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's watching.
Right. Hope that whole recording I did when you weren't here wasn't just as bad. Is that still staticky?
Yeah, it's still staticky.
Wow.
You can
let me try something different.
Yeah, all right, try something. All right, while Conspiracy Brothers working on his audio, there's just something real off about this. And I've been kind of hearing things about, to kind of put the conspiracy tinfoil hat on, as they were saying. You got to think bigger about this macro. You know, Government would like nothing more than to take your land. And there's been a lot of examples of this. Obviously, China, Bill Gates been buying up farmland a number of years. And there's that whole controversy that was going on basically about how the government a few days after the train incident, all of a sudden they were saying, "Hey, it's safe to go back to your homes. It's safe." And they just up and said it, and the amount of backlash they got was just horrendous because everybody knew, like, why are you treating us like we're little children? How the hell are we going to see a chemical mushroom cloud that big? And you're going to say it's safe to go back the next few days. You're getting all these eyewitness accounts. You're getting all these farm people, farmers that the chickens are dying, water's poisoning. They're seeing like translucent, like rainbow, gloss on all the water. There's all these things going on. The lack of media coverage, the lack of kind of covering it up. So it just, once again, you just have to question it. And now we're figuring out, as you can see right here, that they're sending. I think, and I got an update from a friend of our group chat that basically they're sending this Ohio train derailment toxic waste headed to Wayne County for disposal. Wayne County is the county of Detroit. All right. So what could possibly go wrong? All right. And then we found out from a friend of ours that is actually going to Romulus specifically. And that Romulus, check this out, guys, is forced to accept the waste due to state and federal pre-exemption laws. I want to put those laws in. Could have been Democrat, Republican. This is Warren Evans, Wayne County executive, talking right now. So I'm sure a lot of people have questions about this. I'm sure, definitely give this article a read when you get a chance. They seem very irritated, but this kind of goes back to what were the real standards, systems, laws in place? Which administration is to blame? It seems like they're just kind of throwing the blame back and forth. And I think a lot of this is also very suspect because this comes also 2 months. I think it was like 2 months after Biden showed up to the some rail company, did like a speech, speaking of railroad workers. And then I think even before that, I think in the fall, I think the rail workers unions, I think something happened with the unions where they went on, where they could no longer strike or organize. There was some sort of thing that happened where Democrats basically, dropped the ball for the rail workers. So it's just been a lot as far as this affecting food chain, food supplies, and I can kind of go off a bit.
Well, just to give, I just want. Can you hear me? Is it still messed up?
It's a little staticky, but keep going.
So what happened with that rail strike?
Yeah.
Let me see.
They can only have
It's just so weird how a lot of this stuff keeps compounding. Like in the fall.
Right. Would they have like one sick day a year or something that the rail workers can take?
One sick day,
and like, yeah, something like that. And so they were striking like to get more sick days. And I think with the sick day, it has to be, you have to give a certain amount of time notice. Like it's some ridiculous limitations that they put on them. And like you said, the Democrats, who are supposed to be the party of the workers, they completely left the workers out to dry, right? Joe Biden completely squashed the strike because, like, the rail workers are an industry that they have some types of stipulations on whether they can strike or not. It's not just, oh, they can strike because they have a union. It's some rules. And so, like I talked about this earlier, you have a situation where, like, both parties just abuse the people. They're both beholden to the same corporate donors. They're both beholden to the same lobbyists, the same interests, whether it's from the pharmaceutical companies, whether it's from military industrial, whether it's just from your typical run-of-the-mill corporation. And so, we have to suffer it, right? Because they're not sending this stuff to, do you want to play the video? Do you have your audio? Sure. Because they're not, okay. Yeah. They're not sharing this. Oh yeah, you just have it muted. They're not sharing. They're not storing this in Joe Biden's
derailment of the Norfolk Southern train in East Palestine, Ohio, about 3 weeks ago, has suddenly sparked controversy here in Metro Detroit. Officials here say some of the toxic waste the train was carrying was quietly brought to Wayne County for disposal. Jacqueline Francis live with more on the locations and the rather fiery response tonight from Warren Evans, among others. Jacqueline.
Yeah, just as the news conference was ending tonight, U.S. Representative Debbie Dingell got a text from the EPA saying no more hazardous material will be coming to Wayne County. But what about the stuff that's already here, including the contaminated wastewater sent to this site in Romulus?
The outward effect of it looks like we're being sandbagged.
Wayne County Executive Warren Evans holding a news conference Friday evening after learning tons of contaminated dirt and liquid material from the East Palestine train derailment were delivered here.
Not knowing that they're coming, which way they're coming, how safe the trucks are that are coming, is something that has got us all very, very irritated.
The hazardous material is called vinyl chloride, a chemical known to cause cancer and can be lethal. The materials were sent to two different licensed hazardous waste sites in Wayne County, owned by the same company, U.S. Ecology, a deep well liquid injection site in Romulus, and a contaminated soil site in Belleville.
I have health issues that I'm concerned about. I have issues about, environmental injustices in terms of what's going on there, and I think that's something that we should have heard about sooner.
Local officials say the train company, Norfolk Southern, made that call, taking them by surprise. The EPA has now taken over the derailment site, communicating directly with elected officials like Congresswoman Debbie Dingell.
From the governor on down, our job, and we will deliver on our job, is to ensure that those that we represent are safe and that no one ever again blindside everybody the way they did on the delivery of this material.
We've reached out to the company here multiple times, but have not heard back. In the meantime, one of the big questions now is what's going to be done with the materials already delivered, and can it be handled safely? That's what those elected officials are focused on. We'll continue to follow this story. Reporting live in Romulus, Jacqueline Francis, Local 4.
Some kind of development there. All right, Jacqueline.
Yeah, so couple things. How transparent are they going to be? You know, once again, they just had to show up here like, oh, my bad. You know, that's kind of like your cousin Ray got out of jail. He show up on your front door. He on your couch when you get home from work. And it's like, bruh, you didn't tell me he was getting out. You didn't tell me he was coming over here. That's kind of what Ohio, what they kind of pulled on us. So my biggest question right now, you know, we could move on to another topic, but you know, just the lack of transparency. Them telling the Ohio residents, oh, you can go back after 3 days. So when did they bring it all here? How much chemicals are here? What type of chemicals will they be disposing of? What are the methods of the different ways they're going to dispose of them? What's good about those ways? What are the pros? What are the cons? Is there going to be maybe a vote or city council vote or town hall vote on how they're going to dispose of it in specific, transparent town hall type symposium, how they're going to go about it? Or they're just going to do it behind our backs again? You know, these are these are real questions that apparently they don't want to even ask. But that's what I'm thinking, conspiracy brother. You know, what do you think? You know, before we wrap up here.
Well, I agree 100%. I talked about just like I said when you were out. I talked about just the exposure limits and the ways that, like there was a guy in an article I read where he grows his own food in Ohio, and he wanted the EPA or Norfolk Southern to test his soil. He said he tested for 4 chemicals. It cost him $400. And he said he grows all types of, you know, eggplant, asparagus, potatoes, you know, garlic. And now he's afraid that he can't eat it. Right. And so this is the situation we're in now. Warren Evans, you know, they can say we're blindsided, but this is a Democratic administration, and Debbie Dingle's a Democrat. Her husband was a Democratic congressman for, I want to say, like 60 years. Warren Evans is a Democrat. And so, again, I'm not bringing their political affiliation to try to make it like Democrat bad. What I'm showing is that it doesn't matter. The Democratic president didn't tell the Democratic county commissioner for the largest county in Michigan, a state that gave him the White House, or the Democratic congresswoman whose husband was one of the longest serving congressmen in history, a heads up, or his administration didn't give them a heads up about transporting dangerous toxic chemicals to Michigan. I already went, like I told you, it's 1.1 part per million that you could be exposed to within 8 hours, is what they say. 1 part per million. They say 5 parts per million, 15 minutes or less. And so, like I was saying, you know, when you burn that stuff, nobody's taking a survey of how much of that is being exposed in the air. So we don't know. But like we were saying earlier, if we're looking at this from a conspiratorial mind, does it make sense that all of a sudden you've got these trains derailing like you see with the food storage depots catching fire? That's really strange. Or like you see this increase in unexplained deaths, right? All this stuff is strange. And so it could be strange, right? It could be strange. But again, you also have a president who decided, rather than go to Ohio and deal with this not natural, but this ecological disaster, this man-made ecological disaster, that he would go to Ukraine and deal with their country.
Perfect segue. Now keep going.
Well, I mean, you know, that's the situation we're under, right? You've given hundreds of billions of dollars to this country, and you have American people who are suffering, right? Who are dying, or who, at the very least, will be dying soon as a result of this dangerous chemical release. And I mean, if you want to play the mayor of East Palestine, he was a video, like I said, I think it was on Jesse Waters, where he talked about it being a slap in the face that Biden went to Ukraine instead of coming to Ohio. It's optically, it's a bad look. It's a totally bad look.
Yeah, and I think this headline sums it up. Because once again, this just goes to show, like, more and more, you just see this administration. I won't say Democrats in general, but obviously the Biden administration, karmic retribution. Let's really keep, just throwing it in America's face. Say we're about America, but really you're all about Ukraine, and we're just gonna make things worse and worse. And yeah, this is the biggest slap in the face, because once again, I like America first. I like that policy. You put the breathing mask on us first. And you see this administration more and more just become a money laundering operation for Ukraine. And, so much crumbling infrastructure, so many issues with the train companies, in both administrations, even under Trump. Yet you guys are so adamant on sending all this money to Ukraine. We got all these issues, all the homelessness, all the veterans, and now we have all these East Palestine uh, refugees. And it just goes to show, like, the people that still don't get it, the people that just watch CNN, MSNBC all day, they don't get. They're just trapped. They're brainwashed. But anybody else with an independent mind sees that they're not even hiding it anymore. There's no way you can still defend Ukraine, and then you just see how they're just slapping America in the face with this. So just absolutely ridiculous. All right, so moving on. Next topic. Anything you want to add before we wrap up that topic?
No, I'll stop there. I kind of covered a lot of this, but I'll stop there.
Okay. All right, and also since we're on this subject, last part of the topic. And we'll keep it brief, not a whole lot to talk about, but I just think that the fact that, once again, I'm not the biggest Trump fan, but at the same time, as far as running the country, as far as doing a lot of things right, and now he really played this very well, coming to East Palestine, meeting with the people, taking the veteran, the first responders out for McDonald's and whatnot, you know, but still bringing out water and doing what a presidential candidate, what a leader does. And it's just sad that it had to take Trump coming out for Peter Buttigieg and his camp of cronies to finally even acknowledge it. And you could see there were clips where literally reporters would say, "Hey, why are you out here? Why did it take you 3 weeks?" And he can't even answer them. This is the smugness of this administration where I don't need to answer to you. We don't do that. That's not from the playbook. And it took Trump coming out and meeting with people for Pete Buttigieg to get off his butt and do what he was supposed to do. You know? So it's just very telling. It really shouldn't be this obvious. You should see Biden and Trump and Pete Buttigieg. You should see them both competing neck to neck, in East Palestine right now. But you can just see how telling they are. They want to rub it in your face and just not even pretend to care. And that's kind of the most scary part, is that they don't care anymore. They feel they're so untouchable. They're so elite. Yeah, we can now kind of point our nose up, so to speak. Okay. All right. Next topic. Project Veritas. James O'Keefe ousted from Project Veritas. Crazy story. This developed about a week ago, I think. And those are guys that know Project Veritas. I think they've been around maybe going on 10, 15 years. Founded by James O'Keefe. So many hard-hitting stories, what I like to call real investigative journalism. Obviously, I don't agree on all their stances A lot of the corporate media tries to just paint him as extreme right wing, but no, they're really doing what you guys have long stopped doing. As part of establishment media. So this came just off the heels of the Pfizer scandal. And I say scandal, I mean it was probably their best investigation to date, where they caught the guy Jordan Tristan Walker, whatever his name was, a Pfizer executive. He was a Pfizer director, and basically they set him up on a date. They usually do this. They had a guy on a date with them, and they're talking it up, and he's just you know saying everything about what they're doing, basically gain a function. They under the guise of I think mutated evolution or something. But we all know it's gain of function. Pfizer's starting to plot gain of function. So you guys can look that up. Big scandal. Um, they're trying to pretend like he never worked there, but they came with the receipts. So I think it wasn't even a week later, all of a sudden this guy gets ousted from his company. And once again, I'm sure James O'Keefe. He's the brain. He's the face of Project Veritas. So it's kind of a lesson at the same time, almost kind of like with Kanye. Sometimes it's not really your company if you don't have the right people in place, and you know, and sometimes we got the certain board members, they could take certain power away from you. So I'm not sure what his whole contract was or his paperwork with the company. But of course, as you get bigger, you get donors and you give out part ownership of your company, this thing can happen. I think once again, not a whole lot to kind of hit on here, but I think he's going to come back, land on his feet. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of waiting until the dust settles, and then probably just starting his own thing. I mean, if the company's that compromised and captured, where your own board members are coming after you, and even your donors, there's donors defending him, and they're trying to debunk all these rumors about the things he was being accused of. But even the donors can't really protect you. That's very captured uh, situations going on in his company. So those are my initial thoughts. I think this isn't like a huge loss. I think James O'Keefe's gonna you know go start his own thing, start something even better. Conspiracy brother, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of the points you were making. Ultimately, looking at the levers that may have been controlling who funds his organization, you see this as an outcome like when you were talking about Pfizer and whole gain of function. From what I understood, they were basically trying to mutate the virus so they could come up with vaccines for it ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is a gain of function.
Right.
But they were trying to do that so they could make new vaccines more effectively. Because typically, like with the flu shot, which while the flu shot is BS too, but with the flu shot, they make the flu vaccines based on whatever is the most dominant strain from the previous year's flu season. That's how they, and so then they make the new vaccine to counteract that. And sometimes it's successful, and sometimes it's not. And so what I understood they were trying to do was if they do a gain of function on it and then make it mutate early, then they can start working on a cure for it ahead of time. So if something like this gets released, like Minority Report, basically, we're using like future sight almost to, and so like, I mean, one, you're not supposed to be doing that in America, on American soil, and two, you shouldn't be doing that anywhere. Three, most of all, the companies that are creating this vaccine, quote unquote, that has drawn so much skepticism from the American people should not be engaged in this kind of behavior. So, I mean, it's really just all bad. And then, James O'Keefe is going to still be able to go out and do things on his own. You didn't stop him from being able to have a journalistic voice. right?
Right.
You didn't. If anything, you propelled his career to higher heights. More people are going to want to help him out. More people are going to want to blow the whistle. More people are going to want to work undercover for him. All you've done is really you've emboldened him, and without unaliving him, you haven't stopped anything. So that's my take.
Well said. All right. Yeah, James O'Keefe, you'll be back up in no time. Okay, as we wrap up here, once again, you guys are watching the 12th episode of Uncomfy Truths, spreading common sense in a nonsense world. And yeah, here we are. The last thing we had is the Rage Against the War Machine rally. This was an epic rally they had. A lot of different people from kind of the independent media. I think you had Tim Pool there, Kim Iverson, Jimmy Dore, Chris Hedges. And this is one of those things where I feel like the Ukraine war, as horrible as it is, in a weird, sick way, it did bring back a kind of a reinvention. I won't say a reinvention, but at least a refresher on anti-war activism. Kind of gave it a shot in the arm, if you will. But trying to find an article. Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah, we'll go right over here. And I think Jimmy Dore Show did a really great breakdown. See, look at this. Wall Street Journal. On cue, there's already mainstream media that's just going at it. Um, there's a long history of, obviously all the different alphabet agencies going to these rallies, dressed up as Nazis, dressed up as Russian, Russian flags, and this was no different. So I feel like a lot of people need to start taking a closer look at different media outlets, because basically, they're going to be finding ways to smear these movements, undermine them. And if you look at the Jimmy Dore episode, they did an excellent breakdown, especially with the history of Rachel Maddow and how she used to even have Tulsi Gabbard on her show. And when Tulsi Gabbard started, speaking out and staying consistent on things with the Obamas, with the Bushes, with Trump and Biden, yeah, all of a sudden she's not on the show anymore. So it just goes to show that, you can't even have an anti-war rally anymore, and the mainstream media just wants to smear it as, oh, it's anti this, it's white supremacists, it's neo-Nazis. But you guys have no problem sending $100 billion to neo-Nazis in Ukraine, So, so yeah, I think if you guys get a chance, watch the footage online. I know there's a few speeches that were really good. But yeah, I mean, conspiracy brother, we've seen this over and over again. Just the infiltration of these organizations trying to do good. Even the ones that are doing bad. Agencies are still going to get in and try and gather that intel and then try and just break it down from the inside. So, what were your thoughts here, at least on our on this rally that they're trying to dismiss?
Well, that's the fear that the establishment has is the people coming together, irrespective of political ideology,
Yep.
to try to push back against the abuses that they have caused us. And so I'm not surprised, but I hope that this can be a launching pad for the people on the ground, irrespective of political affiliation and ideology, to come together to push back, right? Because we have to send a message and send it consistently. I mean, like people joke about the French, right? And say, they're cowards or whatever. You think about World War II. But like they'll protest in a heartbeat in France. They will protest in a heartbeat. and massively. I mean, to the point where their government, the reason the roads in France are so large is because I believe it was the revolution in 1830. It might have been the July Revolution. They were barricading the narrow roads. So in order to make sure that that didn't become a problem in the future, they expanded the road. So like every road is like huge in Paris. And so like we really need to try to make sure that we are putting our government in a similar position of uncertainty and discomfort. You know, and so these are the kind of steps that we need to take to help to ensure that that does happen.
Well said, man. Well said. And yeah, and I think this is a great way we kind of left it off at. I like your point about how this is always what the media doesn't want. They don't want us discovering that, okay, we may not agree in this area. And I encourage you guys out there listening. I think Jimmy Dore was on Tim Pool's show recently, and there was a clip of him where Jimmy Dore roasted the Young Turks, and how like a lot of the far left, it happens on the far right too, where they're just so stuck in their echo chambers where you don't agree with them in every single area, left or right, then you're just like, out of here. Screw you. You're dead to me. Go away. And Jimmy Dore just has a really great way of just sort of summing it up on like, you find those common grounds. It's not like, oh, you're a Trump or you're out. Oh, you're against abortion, you're out. Oh, you're against BLM, you're out. There has to be some things we meet on, because if we get in a nuclear war, bro, we're all going to be affected. We can't be no longer, put together by our petty differences. You pit it against each other for our petty differences. So once again, I think this is kind of one of those things where, do your research, watch the videos, the raw footage. It's so funny how there was a Trans Lives Matter rally in Oklahoma. They stormed the Capitol building, but no, it's so peaceful, And then this thing, whatever's against the establishment, it's an extremist, white supremacist, movement. So I think people are starting to kind of wake up to that instead of just going and just believing everything the media says. So let's just hope more people are waking up, my friend. And that's all I got to say. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to episode 12 of Uncomfy Truths. I know it was a little bit of a wild ride. He had a little bit of adversity. I'm a little under the weather. Well, I'm a lot under the weather, but I still show up. We had some technical difficulties earlier. Conspiracy Brother definitely held down the fort, did his thing, with this episode, and we still showed up and followed through. So let's do that, guys. You guys have a wonderful, enjoy the rest of your February. We'll definitely be back in March. Obviously, want to keep this thing going at least once, twice a month. And that's all I got. Conspiracy Brother, anything else you want to add before we ride out?
No, man. Apart from just the overall theme of we got to try to come together and push back against these forces that would try to control us and have us doing things that have no benefit to us in the long run. And so we shouldn't, right? We need to be mindful of the game they're trying to play in the Matrix, where they're trying to control what we do and how we think and what we say. And they try to manipulate us and create a narrative. Like when I showed that video of Nordstream, when all the different politicians and all the CIA, John Brennan, that's his name, John Brennan, and all these different people, and they want to blow it up. It was Russia. Like, what would be the incentive for for Russia to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline? Would be like a person who had cash money, stacks of cash money in their house, setting their house on fire. You know what I'm saying? Like that it serves no legitimate purpose. And so we have to be smarter than that. You can feel however you feel about Russia, feel however you feel about Ukraine. I'm not asking you to change your beliefs, but I'm just asking you to think critically. I'm asking you to be more suspicious of whatever they're trying to tell you, because you had all these different people. Like I said, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, Reuters, New York Times, Washington Post, all agreeing. ABC News, NBC News, all agreeing. That ought to tell you something. George Carlin says Jimmy Dore quotes us all the time. It's a big club and you ain't in it.
Yeah.
We have to understand that and take that to heart. Understand, the critically think. Understand the context. Why would somebody want to tell us the truth? And, does that make sense relative to whether they would want to lie to us or not? So that's all I got. But thanks for joining us again for episode 12.
Yep. All right, y'all. We will see you next time. Until then, keep seeking the truth and spread common sense in a nonsense world. And we are out.
Peace.